Welcome, everybody, to the CFL's Weekly Pick'em show. We're at week 20. I'm your host, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I'd like to welcome in my co-host for tonight's show, number one, Brian Schmidt.
Hey, everybody. Good to be here and getting close to playoff time.
Yes, it is, which is the best time of the year in the CFL. We have Oz Davis couldn't make it tonight. Between me and you guys, I think he said he was out trick-or-treating. I'm hoping he's got little kids if he is, but I could see Oz out in a costume going around getting candy. But I think the main reason is the way he laughed at me and ridiculed me last week, Brian, when I picked Montreal over Calgary.
I'm thinking that's probably what the reason was.
Yeah, and I know Oz will listen to this show as soon as it's up. And Oz, don't be a chicken. All right. Next up, we've got filling in for Oz, who's also on the Rouge, White, and Blue show, which you can hear every Wednesday morning on thegruelingtruth.net. We got Joe Pritchard. How you doing tonight, Joe?
I'm doing all right, but I just wonder how I'm going to fill as much airtime as Oz does on this show.
Well, you won't. We know the show's going to be like 10 minutes tonight because Oz isn't here to go off on one of his rants, which I know Brian will be disappointed in. But
yes, I will.
Also, we usually have Dieter Brock on. Dieter was supposed to be on tonight. He hadn't called in yet. Hopefully he'll call in during the show, so we'll be waiting on Dieter. But let's go ahead. We'll start off Edmonton 29, Hamilton 26, probably the game of the week. Potential playoff preview, depending on if the Eskimos remain in the crossover spot when the regular season ends. Brian, what was your take on Hamilton with Zach Collaros?
Well, I mean, they're certainly a better team with him than not. I mean, they're defensively they've got some problems, but with Zach, they're a dangerous team. Without Zach, they are in a lot of problems. So, this could be a very dangerous team just because of him. I mean, he just seems to bring a different level to that team.
Yeah, and the same thing, I think, goes for Edmonton, Joe. Very dangerous team. You got Mike Riley, who, in my opinion, is the best quarterback in the CFL. You also got John White, who carried the ball 15 times for 132 yards, 8.8 a carry. I mean, this Edmonton team could win a Grey Cup, Joe.
That they could, and they have behind John White, they've got Shakir Bell, too, in case White goes down. If they can make it to the next week, because they usually would scratch Bell. If they can make it to the next week, they can just reload with Bell. So they've got a little bit of depth playing for them, too, now. Yeah,
and then that moves us to the team that was battling with Hamilton, Ottawa for the division, which I believe they clinched it. So the East Division's road to the Grey Cup will officially go through Ottawa. Henry Burris played well again, 23 of 33 passes, 338 yards, no touchdowns. You had, I don't even know how to say this guy's last name. Is it Moses Madu?
Yep, that sounds about right.
All right, close enough, but racked up 125 yards. I think Ottawa's another team, Joe, that's really dangerous.
Yeah, they're dangerous if they can outscore their opponents. Their defense hasn't been stellar this year, but, well, when you're playing a team that drops a bomb like the Bombers did this week, well, you're going to win a lot of games.
All right, real quick, Joe, I always wanted to ask this question. You say they'll be all right as long as they can outscore their opponents. How can you win a game without outscoring your opponents? You
do have a point. I'm just saying that their defense is going to win them a lot of games.
Yeah, you got to. I mean, and the thing is this: their defense only gave up 10 points to Winnipeg.
Yeah, that was probably the worst Winnipeg effort since Matt Nichols stepped in for Drew Willie way back when.
Yeah, and you're a Blue Bombers fan. Is this any cause for concern? Because I think Winnipeg could have clinched a home playoff game, which they haven't had since, about 1918? And then they come out, play at home against Ottawa with something to play for, and they just threw up a stinker of a game.
Oh, when you're a Bomber fan, you're used to it.
Really? That's something Oz would say right there about the Alouettes.
Yeah, well, the Alouettes haven't been bad for very long. The Bombers.
No, I know.
I became a Bomber fan in 2005. I haven't seen much good.
All right, Brian, what's your take on Ottawa-Winnipeg? Is Winnipeg in some trouble, do you think? And how big a threat is Ottawa?
I think Ottawa's a big threat again because offensively they can do some things. Winnipeg, again, have looked good for so long, and you throw up a stinker here. We're going to see. I think that the real Winnipeg will show up in the playoffs. I think they'll be a factor. Are they a Grey Cup team? I don't know about that, but I think that they're certainly a team that can cause a little havoc in the playoffs.
All right, that'll bring us to the BC Lions. Beat Saskatchewan Roughriders 24-6. Last game at Mosaic Stadium. Jeremiah Johnson ran for a touchdown, while Jonathan Jennings threw for 2, leading the Lions to a 24-6 win. I still think BC's a huge threat, Brian.
Yeah, I do too. Everything for them is going to come down to how Jonathan Jennings plays. When he's on, he's really on. When he's off, he is really off. There's no in the middle. So if he is hot and can stay hot in the playoffs, they're going to be a great team in the playoffs. But he's a wonder right now because he can look good 2, 3, 4 games in a row, and then all of a sudden inexplicably just looks horrible. So if he gets on a roll, they can be dangerous.
Yeah, and I think the concern there is to be able to win a Grey Cup, he's going to have 3 games in a row where he plays really well.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if he can do that. I think he's going to be a hell of a quarterback in the future. I think it's just the growing pains of a young quarterback.
Absolutely.
Saskatchewan. Joe, I'll give you Saskatchewan. A few weeks ago, everybody was talking about how they were one of the 6 best teams and could probably be a playoff team. 3 weeks later, nobody's saying that anymore. Darian Durant, 15-28. Do you think the Rough Riders in the future need to cut their losses with Durant and find another quarterback?
Well, they got to find one first. They've been trying over the past couple of years between the injury in midseason 2014 and the first week last year to find a replacement, and they haven't done so well with that. So until they can find somebody that they can trust, why not try to keep Durant around for another year or 2?
All right, and finally, the game everybody was waiting to hear about. Montreal 17, Calgary 8. I believe I am the only one to pick that, Brian.
Yeah, you're probably the only one that picked it in the North American continent. So, congratulations.
Yeah, but what about in Tulsa?
Okay, yeah, there is that.
But, I mean, you had Rakeem Cato, Vernon Williams Jr. combined, played great under center for the Alouettes. Nick Lewis had a pair of CFL milestones. Montreal took down a team that was looking to basically have the greatest record in CFL history. My concern here for Calgary is it's going to be a long time between playing with Bo Levi Mitchell against a quality opponent and their next playoff game. I mean, that has to be some concern, doesn't it?
Yeah, I would think so. But the flip side into that, they should be going into that game extremely healthy. So, you take if they lose, we're going to talk about the time off hurt them. If they win a Grey Cup, we're going to talk about how they're going to this thing completely 100% healthy. So, that kind of thing is always a toss up.
All right, and usually we let Oz talk about the Alouettes. So, Joe, Alouettes, go.
So what? I have about 15, 20 minutes here.
Yes, you have 32 minutes and 43 seconds right now. But, I mean, what's your take? Who's the quarterback next year, Cato or Adams?
I almost think you have to give Adams at least a leg up going into the season just based off of what you invested in him. You got to make it look like that first-round pick's not going to be a complete waste. Now, Cato's had a few more opportunities than Adams has had, and Adams hasn't lit up the scoreboard. But you got to at least see what you got in it. If you're going to put in that much of your franchise into a quarterback, you got to at least let him run with it and see what you got.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, if you watched, I don't know, did you see any Mosaic Stadium ceremonies?
More than I wanted to.
Okay, so you're not a Rough Rider fan. You're jealous of the Rough Riders. All right, even though they only win what do they win, a Grey Cup every 50 years? But I mean, really, whether you like them or not, it was a great send-off. The way they did it, I thought, was first class. So I thought they sent out Mosaic as good as they could, except for the product on the field, Joe.
Yeah, and there was actually another team on the field that night too, but I don't know if TSN mentioned that much or not. That being where my little bit of annoyance comes from, but that just seems to be the way it goes with this league and promoting the riders. Now, they'll have a little bit more to promote next year because I think the riders are going to do a lot better. I think they came around in the second half of the season and showed what they could be, but they're going to need at least another year of loading up to get back into the playoff race.
All right, and my question to you, Brian, was we go back to the Hamilton game with Edmonton. Why doesn't C.J. Gable carry the ball more? I mean, he ran wild early in the game, and then it's like they just went away from him. I mean, he had 4 carries in the first quarter for 38 yards, and then the rest of the night he got the ball 2 more times.
Yeah, I don't understand that. And I think that's the product of not just Hamilton, but a lot of teams is put the ball in the hands of your playmaker, and when you're doing it and it's going well, why don't you keep doing it? And I don't understand that. To me, that's a guy you've got to put the ball in his hands as much as possible. Because he is such a great playmaker. So that's something certainly I think from a playoff standpoint that they certainly need to do to have a chance. That's a great. It's a great outlet for Zach Collaros to have, somebody you can throw a quick pass to, and he'll turn a 2 or 3 yard pass into 40, 50 yards.
Yeah, because let's face it, no matter how good Collaros is playing, they're going to have to outscore people, as Joe would say, because their defense is not very good. And the fact that if they can run the ball while throwing it is going to eat more time and keep their defense off the field a little bit more at least.
Exactly. So it'll be interesting to see if they listen to us come playoff time.
Well, I know the Steelers didn't listen to you a couple of weeks ago, but maybe they will. So right now we're going into the last week, Joe. I mean, how many teams do you think out of the 6 that are going to the playoffs, how many do you really think are capable of winning a Grey Cup?
I would say 5 of the 6. I don't think Hamilton's got a shot. They're not going to be able to put together 3 straight wins. They're just not capable of it. Ottawa's only got to do it twice, and they have an offense capable of doing that. The other 4 in the West, they could all get hot. I could easily see them, any single one of them, doing it. I actually think Winnipeg's got the least chance of any, just based off of their skill set and the fact they'd probably have to go through both BC and Calgary. That's a pretty tough road for any team.
Yeah, do you agree with him, Brian?
I do to a point. I think Hamilton has a little bit more of a shot only because of their quarterback situation and offensively they can get hot. I don't think it's a big shot, but I think that they have a little bit of more of a shot than maybe people give them credit for, just because we've seen when Collaros gets hot and that offense gets going, they can certainly put points up. It's just a matter of that consistency right now, and that's something they've not had.
All right, so the first pick of the week will go to Joe, since he's our guest, and the first game is Winnipeg, his Blue Bombers at Ottawa. Who you got, Joe?
I've got Winnipeg based on the idea that Ottawa has nothing to play for, and Winnipeg does.
Okay, Brian?
I would agree. I would go with Winnipeg, only because I would imagine that Ottawa may, obviously this game is not important, and you maybe arrest a few people, and obviously you want to come out of this game injury free as much as possible. So I think Winnipeg's going to be coming into this thing guns blazing. So I think that's what gives them the edge.
All right, the next game, I guess I'll pick it first. Montreal at Hamilton. I picked them last week, and I'm not picking them this week. I'm going to go with Hamilton. I think Hamilton, the difference is Hamilton will have their starting quarterback playing. And let's face it, anybody that's going to play with their backup quarterback against Montreal, you risk losing the game, because I think Montreal's defense is as good as any in the CFL. So I'm going to go with Hamilton. Brian?
Yeah, I'm going with Hamilton. Anytime Montreal wins, then usually the next week they completely tank. So I'm going to go with the percentages, and also I think Hamilton's really got to do something to get this thing rolling. I think this is a great opportunity to really start gaining some momentum going into the playoffs.
All right, Joe.
I'm going to be the contrarian here. I'm taking Montreal. I just think when that defense is going as well as it is right now, I don't trust Hamilton's offense, especially since they lost Andy Fantus for the season. That's not going to help them at all. And they won't give C.J. Gable the ball. I think that puts them in a lot of trouble against Montreal's defense.
All right, Brian, you're up next. We'll give you the toughest game of the week to pick, Toronto at Edmonton.
Edmonton.
All right, Joe. Did you want to say more about that game?
Yeah, not even close. Go ahead. Done.
Okay, Joe.
Yeah, Edmonton.
Yeah, Edmonton for me too. All right, Joe, Saskatchewan at BC, another tough one.
No, I'm going with BC here because they're based off of my earlier pick. They've got something to play for. Saskatchewan doesn't. And like I was telling Oz on the Rouge, White, and Blue earlier tonight, I'm thinking by the second quarter, a few of those Riders players will have one foot on the tarmac, ready to go home.
All right, Brian.
Yeah, I don't think there's really any possible way you could go with Saskatchewan in this game. I agree. I mean, bags are packed. If there are guys that may sneak on, get on a plane at halftime. So definitely cannot go with Saskatchewan on that one.
All right, I am going to agree again. So I guess we all agree on everything except for Joe's pick of Montreal over Hamilton. So that brings me to the final question. I've seen a lot of CFL message boards. Give me right now, who's the best quarterback in the CFL, Brian?
Right now, I would say Riley. I would say Riley with Bo Levi Mitchell. If it's a 1A 1B thing, because I think Mitchell's pretty special, but Riley to me just seems to have a dynamic that ability to overcome lack of talent in certain spots, and defensively at times this year they've not been good, and he seems to always find a way to make something happen. So I give him a little bit of an edge over Mitchell.
All right, Joe.
I'm a believer myself. I mean, just look at what happened this past week. Drew Tate's not a very good quarterback. I never have thought so. But look at what happened to Calgary when Bo Levi came out of the lineup.
So that means you like Bo Levi better than Riley?
That I do.
All right. So out of the two of you, only one of you is wrong, and it's Joe. I agree with Brian on this one. I'll take Mike Riley over anybody.
Yeah, that's not a bad pick to make.
To me, Mike Riley's the best. I think he's number one by far. I think number two is Bo Levi Mitchell. I thought for sure as a Blue Bomber fan you would say Drew Willie, Joe.
But were we talking about best or worst?
I don't know. What's the difference? I picked Dieter. Dieter Brock's the best. But hopefully Dieter will be back with us next week. I assume Oz will be back, but if not, we can always have Joe back because, let's face it, I can understand what he says a lot more than what Oz says because Oz is from California and they'll talk a little weird. Am I right there, Brian?
Well, people from California think some people from Indiana talk weird. So.
Yeah, but they're wrong because they're weird anyways. Joe's from Wisconsin, so that's a strike. But still, I still like him though. But Joe, I know it was a complete honor for you to be on this show with me and Brian, but do you have any final words?
Yeah, I don't think I quite met the quota for Rouge, White, and Blue host on this show. So sorry about that. I'm sure we'll have to find other ways to fill the time.
Oh, it's fine. We're still like 20, 25 minutes. That's plenty long enough. Brian?
All I know is I want to get through this week to get to playoff time because that is an exciting time in the CFL and going to be a very interesting playoff race. So we just need to get through this week.
Yeah, and next week, guys, we'll be back. I think there's a bye week in between playoffs, isn't there?
Nope, we'll go straight to the semifinal.
Really? That's what Oz told me. Oz lied to me, didn't he?
Well, Oz can be wrong sometimes. I have to tell him that every weekend.
Remember that. You know what we're going to do? We're going to snip that recording out. We're going to start the show out with Joe saying, Oz is wrong sometimes. But so make sure you come back with us next week. Joe, if you want to come back with Oz and Dieter, do a 5-man show for the playoffs.
Well, if you're game, I'm game.
All right. So make sure you check out thegruelingtruth.net. I know that we got NFL shows. Brian Schmidt, you're on with former Steeler Dwight Stone. Anything on hand this week except hope that you guys don't crash and burn like you did the last game?
Pretty much. We talked a little bit about the Baltimore game. We'll be definitely making some predictions on how we like the game to go. If Ben plays, if Ben doesn't play, and kind of go from there. We torched a lot of subjects last week with being a bye week, so we'll talk a little bit more about Baltimore this week.
All right, you check out my Cincinnati Bengals weekly show with myself and Joe Kelly, former Cincinnati Bengal linebacker, where we will bitch and complain about having to play a home game in London, about a game being a tie, and generally just bitch. All right, Joe, you got a Green Bay Packers weekly show. You want to tell us what you got coming up this week on the Titletown Huddle?
Yes, we'll talk about how the Packers need to do a better job of outscoring their opponent.
Oh, so we're all three miserable. I forgot. We all three
Pretty
lost.
much.
Well, we tied. We tied. Schmidt didn't play, but his last team's game was lost. Also, you can check out our San Francisco 49ers weekly show with former San Francisco 49er return man Dexter Carter and Matt Andrews-Scavage. And then we've got a special show, Oz Davis, former Ram Tony Hunter, doing a Rams 2.0 show. Their guest this week, and the show will be out probably Thursday night, Friday morning. Their guest this week is 1969 NFL MVP quarterback Roman Gabriel, so make sure you don't miss that. And Wednesday night, we'll be able to catch our latest installment of the NFL Legends Show, where I will be interviewing former Cincinnati Bengal defensive tackle Tim Crumry. So make sure you check that out also. So make sure you go to Gridiron Mode to check us out at www.gridironmode.com for our show's main sponsor. Follow us on Twitter at Grueling Truth, and you can catch all of our shows on iHeart, TuneIn, iTunes, Google Music, pretty much everywhere you see a sports podcast, you'll find the Grueling Truth. So for Joe Pritchard, Brian Schmidt, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to the Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.